Welcome back for a special new top 10 list, or rather, top 5 list. As always, this is Goku-san DBZ, and today, as a special Halloween themed top 5 list, we are looking at my personal top 5 favorite Resident Evil games of all time, aka Biohazard. So, with that said, we have 3 honorable mentions. Enjoy the choice of music in the background from the original classic, Resident Evil, on PS1. Speaking of, first of the 3 honorable mentions, and I will let my assistant Cthulhu help. Yes, first of the 3 honorable mentions is the original classic Resident Evil, or more specifically, Director's Cut. I've never been able to get a hold of a copy of the original classic on PS1. The original version, which was not have a bunch of editing like the Director's Cut version did. But if you want a true uncensored version of RE1, you have to pick that up on the Sega Saturn. There it is, as a representation. If you want truly fully uncensored though, this would be the only choice. You would have to import from the Sega Saturn from Japan, unfortunately, a Biohazard. If you want the original, completely uncensored, and yes, exclusively only for the Saturn. So just keep that in mind, but it still remains a classic for me personally. Next honorable mention is, I think, some people's personal favorite. It's not mine, but it's definitely one that I like quite a bit. That being Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Once upon a time, a while ago, it was in my top 5 favorites, though it has dropped in recent years as I've gone to try a few more various different ones. Still, I always enjoyed the challenge of fighting Nemesis. Last of the honorable mentions was a game up until about 2 or 3 years ago was in my top 5. And the last of the honorable mentions, which I constantly will mention and praise this game, and that is Resident Evil 0. Definitely one of, I think, the more criminally underrated games in the franchise as a whole. I get it, a lot of people don't like this game specifically for the fact that difficulty is much higher, and I get it, the way the mechanics of the game worked and stuff was very different than other previous installments of the series. But I liked how you could go back and forth play between the two different key characters, which was very integral and important to the puzzles in Resident Evil 0, and thus also offered a variety of different style challenges and stuff, though you would also have to end up dealing with like the Crimson Head zombies, which was the introduction in the Resident Evil Remake. With that said, coming in at number 5 is the most recent addition to my list. In just the last few years, I've only got the opportunity to try, and that is Resident Evil 7. Also known as just Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, or in Japan, Biohazard Resident Evil. Which is kind of weird how they did that with the titles. Still, nevertheless, it was great to see this game because it really helped the franchise return to form, and may I add, what really put it over the edge into my top 5 was the VR experience. In my opinion, this is how you do a compatible with VR game, and it is unfortunate that Village has not done the VR experience, which sucks in my opinion. I mean, I'm still looking forward to playing Village, but it it's just sad that I'm not going to be able to go through the same amazing experience of this. But still, nevertheless, doesn't change the great enjoyment. And if you wonder that music in the background, yes, that is none other than Moonlight Sonata, which of course is one of my favorite things about RE1. But with that said, coming in at number 4. Speaking of the original classic Resident Evil, as I said, the original version of Resident Evil has gone down in rank over the years for me, and partially what booted it out of the top 5 and some others was this game as the more, and yes, you will see this in an upcoming future episode of Pickups. I have played this back in the past when I originally owned a GameCube years ago, and I'm glad I did. Resident Evil Remake is, in my opinion, how a remake is done correctly and excellently well crafted and put together. This, in my opinion, is an example of how it should be done. This is the perfect remake, in my opinion. From the ground up, it is superb, great, and the introduction and concept of things like the Crimson Heads was a very interesting idea, and some of the other add-ons. And yes, I will say, I think the difficulty in the remake is higher. I would put it almost on par with Zero, but not quite. But still, it is my 4th favorite Resident Evil game of all time. Arguably, I just love it, and the game still looks great on the GameCube in my opinion. And it's great to have the original version once again. Coming in at number 3 is a game that is definitely what began the change and leaving the old, I guess you could say, mechanics, if you will. First, recent pickup, the classic GameCube version of RE4, of course, but here's the version I know best for exclusive still 10. That is Resident Evil 4. With, of course, this was the game I feel that made Leon Kennedy the face of the franchise as a whole. It's what really made and defined Leon Kennedy for the most part. But with that said, yes, in my opinion, Resident Evil 4 is definitely great, and it really did help the franchise evolve with the times. And it is a game that deserves a lot more love, though I can honestly say even I can understand why some people consider this an overrated game. Believe me, I get it, and I completely understand why you might consider it. And heck, I even agree. But you have to think, this game really helped revolutionize and help evolve the genre and helped Resident Evil franchise to survive. Though unfortunately a few future sequels called 5 and 6 would, in my opinion, somewhat kill the franchise, in my eyes. Though 5 is fun in a co-op experience, just doesn't feel like Resident Evil. At least this still had that feel with the atmosphere elements, even if it didn't have the classic messed up, clunky mechanics and everything, which I think, and I will agree, it's an acquired taste thing to have. But I still love it nevertheless. Coming in at number 2 is games that I constantly have mentioned that I love passionately, and that is, of course, Resident Evil Code Veronica. Though, of course, when it would get re-released for the PS2 as well as for the GameCube, it would be known as Veronica X. Now, Veronica on the PS2, I have played many times. I've beat it probably 4 or 5 times on the PS2 version, though I personally still, my personal favorite version is the Dreamcast version. That was the first version I ever owned. I have probably beat this game on the Dreamcast, give or take, around 10 times. So total between all consoles, I have beat this game probably about 13 to 14 times in total. It's kind of crazy. I have beat this game probably more than any other game, though I would probably put Resident Evil 2 pretty close up there. But yes, I love, and I still want to eventually try out the GameCube version of this game, but Well, the GameCube version is what I would consider very overpriced nowadays compared to these. I'm glad I kept them because, in my opinion, it's great and probably, in my opinion, the most criminally underrated of the bigger ones. And it will never leave my number. But I, of course, just recently, in fact, about a day or so ago, I did finally a review on my all time favorite Resident Evil game, the classic original Resident Evil 2, which I have played many, many times on the PS1. I have played it, though I don't currently have it. I have experienced the N64 version of the game, and it is a very different experience altogether on the N64. I still have yet to play the Dreamcast port of this, or the GameCube port, and both versions are very expensive nowadays, so I probably will never get to experience them unless I can find for a good price range. But with that said, that is my personal top 5 favorite Resident Evil slash Biohazard games of all time. And we'll see eventually, once I get around and doing a complete playthrough, we'll see my feelings on Resident Evil 8 Village. And I will most likely do a full review on it. In the future, if you're all interested, I may do another retro review and review the original director's cut on PS1, or perhaps Veronica, or Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Up to you. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. Stay safe out there, and hopefully enjoy the sounds and music experience of the original classic Resident Evil. Yes, I hear you, dogs. Stay safe and happy Halloween.